is Alison Stroshine, the storyteller behind Shanti Pox, a blog dedicated to telling stories of inspirational people who are adding more peace to the world and the lessons we can learn and apply to our own lives. And today we're telling an inspirational story of triumph over tragedy. And I'm honored to be speaking to Nitin Madhav. Nitin is the officer in charge for Cambodia at the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. He has a long career in crisis response and humanitarian assistance and has worked all over the world. He is gifted. He's a gifted linguist and speaks 10 languages, and he happens to be one of my best friends. So welcome, Nitin. I'm happy to see you.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. You have an inspirational story of peace to tell. You don't have to go into any sort of details, but just so our audience kind of understands where we're starting, you were deployed to Rwanda with a Spanish medical NGO around 1997?
That's correct.
And something happened there. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Actually, it was my 5th day in Rwanda when our whole office was attacked by a group of Interahamwe insurgents, and we were held hostage, and subsequently 3 of my colleagues were shot and killed and left for dead, and I was shot 9 times in both legs.
Wow.
Leaving my left leg amputated and serious scars on my right leg.
Wow.
So
what happened after that?
Well, I was evacuated from Kigali, from Ruhengeri, Rwanda, which is where it happened, to Kigali, and then from Kigali to Nairobi, and then I was medevaced from Nairobi back to Pittsburgh, which is where my parents lived. And I had several surgeries both in Nairobi and in Pittsburgh, and then came back out of surgery and went through rehab in Pittsburgh, and ended up coming back to Washington and resuming my old job around June of 1997.
And so at this point you had a prosthetic leg.
Right.
And so you had to basically learn how to function again as a normal working adult with one less limb.
In retrospect, it wasn't that hard. It was just initially it was hard to learn how to carry groceries and things like that, or how not to stumble on the uneven sidewalks that we have here in Washington, D.C. But after a while, those things got easier, knock on wood. I haven't stumbled and fallen on a sidewalk in years, and life goes on.
So that's an amazing attitude, by the way, which is why I'm interviewing you. Because I don't think a lot of people would be able to have that perspective. I was lucky enough to meet you when I worked for USAID, and I always accuse you of having a clique of the cool people that I wasn't a part of. But before you and I became friends, and I kind of was welcomed into the clique, I did notice you had a very slight limp, and I thought that maybe you had an accident, like you had a sports injury. I had no idea because you were so ambulatory. Do you get that often where people are surprised?
Well, I had a boss for, I guess 8 or 9 months, and he didn't actually know, and I had to go get my knee checked out one day, and I had said, well, I'm not going to be at this meeting because I need to go get my knee checked out. And so my boss asked my friend Nancy, well, what's wrong with his knee that he needs to keep getting it checked out? And she looked at him and said, you do realize that he has a fake leg, right? He said, really? I thought he just had polio or something.
Oh, gosh. Nice. So I also met you when you were working on the Afghanistan team, and this was a long time ago in 2002, 2003, right after the invasion. And maybe when you and I met, you had just returned from Afghanistan, but you had, with everything that had happened to you in Rwanda, and now, you know, living with, you know, a new lifestyle, you actually deployed to Afghanistan, which is incredible. Can you tell us, like, why you wanted to go?
Yes, it's actually very, very, very easy. I've worked in Afghanistan before. I worked there in the 90s before I went to Rwanda. I'd worked in the refugee camps in Pakistan, and I know the area really well. I speak the language. And Afghanistan is something that's always been part of my psyche ever since the Russians invaded on Christmas Day, 1979. I remember very, very clearly sitting in the living room of my family home playing with my Christmas presents, and you had Dan Rather on CBS talking about how the Russians were being, and they showed these clips of people that were fleeing from Kabul onto other, you know, from their homes in Kabul to refugee camps and things like that. And it just always sat with me that while my life seemed so perfect and idyllic, at least that Christmas Day, there were so many people whose lives had just been overturned by the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. And so that was one of the reasons why I decided to learn Farsi, and I had worked in the area. And so when September 11th happened, I was one of a few people that really knew the country inside and out. And so I was an obvious choice, and I'd actually wanted to go because I had so many friends who lived in the area that I didn't know from before. It wasn't something that I had to think about twice.
That's incredible. And so, you know, I worked in Afghanistan in 2009 and 2010, and there was a full embassy, and I had very comfortable living conditions and shower and you name it. But when you arrived, it was, what was it, 2002 or 2003?
I actually arrived at the embassy in January of 2002. The embassy had just opened up the previous month, around the 22nd of December 2001, I believe. So we were like the first 100 people that had been there. And it was interesting because we didn't really have beds. There were 2 showers that serviced the entire population of the embassy, which at that point was probably about 150 people or so. The women got 1 shower, and then there was a very long line for the men's shower, and you had to keep waiting for the water to heat up before you could hop back in and take a real shower. So it took forever. But I remember sleeping on, also there was a total lack of beds. We all slept basically in the same rooms where we worked, and I had staked out a spot for myself on the ambassador's conference room table. Because it was the one spot that nobody else had claimed. And it was quite a large table that I could spread out, put a sleeping bag on, plop on top of it, and fall asleep. And it worked fine for quite a long time, except for one morning. It was actually a Saturday morning around 7:30 when the ambassador apparently had a meeting with a couple of other people, and he escorted them into the conference room to find me sitting back fast asleep on the table. The lights came on. I was like, whoa, what happened? I grabbed my fixed leg, put it on, and run out as quickly as possible, much to my embarrassment. But that's what the conditions were like back then.
That's incredible. Did you have any fears, you know, from being in a conflict zone and having, you know, what happened to you? Did it stay with you, or did you just kind of do a reset?
Well, the thing is, I feel more protected in Afghanistan than anywhere else because I have a very special relationship, I think, with the country and the people, right? And so there were times when other people, I just have never really felt in danger anywhere in the country. And I realize that horrible things are happening all over, and my attitude towards this doesn't necessarily jive with other people's realities, and I fully understand that. But when I was there from 2002 to 2004, I've been all around the country. I've been everywhere. I always just felt that the Afghans looked out for me on a level that was just so much more, you know, I've had conversations with Afghans and said, I feel that you all look out for me more so than the average human being and the average person. And the response has always been, well, yes, because you're family.
Yeah. As I said, I went to Afghanistan for the first time in 2005 and then lived there from 2009 to 10. And I don't speak the language, unfortunately, but and I don't have the relationship you have, but I did fall in love myself, and I fell in love with the people, and I fell in love with the country. It does get under your skin. It gets inside you. So I totally understand what you're saying. So my final question for you, Nitin, is what suggestions do you have for people, and I guess I'm thinking of maybe soldiers coming back from Afghanistan who are now going through what you have already been through. Do you have any suggestions for them?
I've seen pictures on TV and stories in the media about various soldiers that have had things happen to them, and it just really breaks my heart. And I know that there's lots of NGOs out there that are doing really good work, like the Wounded Warriors Project and others. But I think the advice that I would offer to somebody is that you cannot compare yourself with somebody else, and your situation is unique. So right after I lost my leg, I had several people ask me if I was going to run a marathon because they'd seen other people run marathons on prosthetic legs. And
Nice.
My reaction was, well, okay, let's try. And so I did. So I signed up to do the Marine Corps Marathon, and it didn't work out very well for me. And what I learned out of that whole process was, okay, I would never have wanted to run a marathon before, so what did I have to prove to somebody else after, right? And other people along the way, I guess, end up trying to live out what they think they should do or what other people think that they should do. And I think you just need to go through, do the best with what life hands you, and sally forth. You cannot say, well, this was that person's experience, and I'm going to try to match that. It doesn't work always. If it does work, well, good luck to you, but it hasn't been my experience.
Yeah, I think that is a great lesson for us to live. You just have to take the best. You have to make the best of what life gives you, and you have to sally forward. I love that. And so that's a lesson that we can take away and apply to our lives is, sometimes we experience tragedies big and small. They don't have to be huge. They can be small, but even sometimes small obstacles can sometimes really affect us. So,
and it's life-changing if you make it be that. For me, my disability is actually not really quite as life-changing as everybody wants it to be. It's more of an inconvenience. Yeah, I gotta wake up in the morning, put on my fake leg before I go through. It's inconvenient. It's not a disability. It's not a life-changing event. So, that's all I've got.
Well, thank you. I'm inspired by you because I am. And I want to thank you so much for opening up to us and talking and offering your perspective. It was fabulous. I feel honored to be sitting here. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And if you haven't subscribed to Shanti Pox, please do so to receive inspirational stories of peace. And remember, it's the little changes we make in our life that add more peace to the whole. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nitin.
Bye.
Bye.